Have you ever finally obtained exactly what you wanted, only to realize moments later that it wasn't as significant as it once seemed? That strange feeling that appears after the excitement fades when silence returns faster than expected. How many times did you believe a new person would finally bring a sense of completeness? And for a moment it even seemed to. Yet everything soon returned to the same point. We live in an era where meeting someone requires nothing more than a swipe across a screen. Access is immediate, variety is endless, and precisely because of that, satisfaction grows shorter each time. Perhaps it is not bad luck nor poor choice. Perhaps a much older mechanism is guiding this behavior. Arthur Schopenhauer argued that life oscillates between the pain of wanting and the boredom of having. Desire creates tension, and its fulfillment removes that tension only temporarily. Soon, another arises. He called this force the will to live, a continuous impulse unconcerned with your happiness, interested only in the continuation of movement. That is why certain urges feel so intense, not always because they are deep, but because they are persistent. In modern life, dating apps have become the perfect environment for this dynamic. There is always another option, another face, another possible conversation. Promiscuity appears not merely as a moral choice, but as the consequence of a system of permanent stimulation. Each new encounter carries the promise of something different, while the result is usually the same. Expectation rises, the meeting happens, excitement fades, and the mind begins searching again. Schopenhauer saw love less as romance and more as nature's strategy. We believe we are seeking personal happiness, yet often we follow an impulse older than ourselves. After the intensity, a quiet moment arrives. Not exactly sadness, but the perception that nothing inside has changed. It is like reaching a destination and realizing the restlessness traveled with you. Thus, the cycle is born. Hope, brief satisfaction, subtle emptiness, and a new search. The greater the number of experiences, the smaller the impact of each one. The promise continues to renew itself, yet is rarely fulfilled. In this sense, promiscuity is not merely excessive encounters. It is the repeated attempt to solve with novelty something that does not depend on novelty. For Schopenhauer, the way out was not to deny life, but to stop automatically obeying every impulse. Instead of reacting immediately to desire, observe it first. In that moment, a person ceases to be driven by repetition and begins to understand the mechanism that kept pushing them toward the next encounter. It is difficult to interrupt a habit when everything around you encourages the opposite. We grow up hearing that freedom means the ability to follow any desire without restriction. Yet many philosophers defended another idea. Freedom is not doing everything you want, but not being forced to obey every impulse. In this sense, promiscuity may look like autonomy, but often functions as disguised dependence, an automatic yes given before reflection. To follow every desire as if it were an urgent command is to live permanently on the surface. Does the sensation truly satisfy, or merely reduce a tension that soon returns? Schopenhauer claimed pleasure is not positive in itself. It is only the temporary relief of a lack. When the lack returns, the cycle begins again. Modern psychology describes this as hedonic adaptation. What once felt intense quickly becomes ordinary, and then we need something new to provoke the same effect. The higher the frequency, the lower the impact. The result is a sequence of experiences that seem many, yet leave little mark. One accumulates memories without depth, encounters that neither wound nor heal, only pass. The human being, unlike other animals, suffers not only from necessity, but also from boredom. We desire what we lack and lose interest in what we possess. The constant search for new relationships is often an attempt to escape this inner emptiness. Yet when silence arrives, only your own company remains. And if your memories are merely passing phases, the silence becomes uncomfortable. Real intimacy requires continuity, remaining after novelty ends and the other person stops being idealized. But the impulse prefers restarting, another conversation, another promise, another beginning easier than going deeper. This movement sustains an entire system built on constant novelty. After all, those who find peace do not consume distractions with the same intensity. Nietzsche said the human being is a bridge, not a final destination. The question is where you are crossing to, greater awareness or greater repetition. Perhaps the frustration after certain experiences is not a problem to avoid, but a signal to listen to. It may indicate that something in you seeks meaning, not merely stimulation. Schopenhauer saw in art a rare interval within this process, moments in which we observe without the urge to possess. In contrast, when the other becomes merely a means of satisfaction, both lose depth. Then arises the typical feeling of disposable culture, everything replaceable, nothing truly important. Recognizing this mechanism already changes your relationship with it. Gradually, quantity loses value and presence gains weight. One discovers that connection does not depend on variety, but on attention. The promise of promiscuity is total freedom. Its frequent effect is the inability to stop. True autonomy appears when you can choose not to follow the immediate impulse. This is not moralism, it is emotional preservation. Energy fragmented too many times cannot sustain anything lasting. The ancients called this state ataraxia, not absence of life, but absence of constant urgency. By preferring calm over compulsion, a person stops reacting automatically and begins deciding consciously. In this simple gesture, a fragment of the oldest habit is broken: the permanent need to want more. Sometimes emptiness is not a problem to eliminate, but something to listen to. When you stop trying to fill it immediately, you begin to perceive what it reveals: insecurities, need for approval, parts of yourself asking for attention. This silent encounter often teaches more than passing experiences. The danger of constantly seeking encounters is becoming accustomed to leaving before ever truly arriving. You create protection against pain, but along with it, you also lose the ability to feel genuine closeness. Gradually, a kind of emotional distance emerges. People pass through your life without leaving marks, and you leave none on them. Schopenhauer did not describe life as joyful, but as lucid. And sometimes seeing clearly is already relief amid superficial relationships. Excessive variety often indicates not richness of experience, but lack of depth. When everything can be quickly replaced, nothing needs to be truly understood. If it were possible to perceive someone's value through time and attention, there would be no need to constantly search for novelty. Intense desire usually diminishes after conquest. What remains is the ability to recognize the other as someone similar to you, not a distraction. The difference between using and sharing lies precisely there. In one case, the other serves. In the other, walks beside you. Before acting on impulse, it is worth asking, what exactly am I seeking now? Closeness, or merely momentary relief? The human body was not made for continuous disposable connections. It records presence and absence alike. That is why many people feel accompanied at night and empty in the morning. Company does not resolve what we avoid confronting. Choosing moments of solitude is not punishment, but perspective. When someone can be alone without discomfort, they begin to choose better when to be with others. Freedom appears when it becomes possible to appreciate without needing to possess. Imagine directing the energy spent on constant searching towards something that endures, creating, learning, cultivating real bonds. Often, agitation serves to avoid deeper thoughts. Yet time passes anyway, and what is slowly built usually endures more than what is lived only through momentary excitement. To desire is human. To understand one's own desire is maturity. When you observe where it comes from, you notice how often it is merely disguised fear. Remaining for a while in silence allows you to discover internal resources that do not depend on external validation. True satisfaction does not come from accumulating experiences, but from being present where you already are. The incessant search becomes noise and prevents you from hearing your own life unfolding. Perhaps you do not need more confirmations, only to recognize that you are already sufficient without the gaze of a stranger. The nothing many fear may be precisely the end of the race, a mental rest where there is no urgency for novelty. In this sense, constantly pursuing another person is like traveling without ever living anywhere. Being at home means being comfortable with yourself. Sometimes the hardest choice is preserving your tranquility instead of trading it for brief enthusiasm. The same hands that sought distraction can begin to build something that remains. What can you do with your choices besides repeating the same passing gesture? What traces of your life still exist the next day? There is something curious in the human condition. Our impulses are strong, but our consciousness can question them. We are capable of perceiving what we feel and deciding whether to follow it. True strength lies not in controlling others, but in understanding yourself. Philosophy merely describes the mechanism. Each person must observe it in their own experience. Notice the instant after pleasure, that moment when excitement fades. Instead of fleeing, observe. There is information about you there. Millions of people live the same movement. They want, they obtain, they lose interest, and they begin again. Breaking this pattern does not only change an individual life, it reduces the collective repetition that leaves everyone tired of their own search. When we try to fill a deep restlessness with superficial experiences, the result is almost always insufficient. Desire is part of human nature, but it does not need to command every decision. It can exist as background noise, not as an order. Seeing this clearly sometimes brings a gentle melancholy, yet it is a sincerity that frees more than a comforting illusion. From this perception, encounters cease to be necessity and become choice. Closeness stops being consumption and turns into mutual recognition. Each time you do not automatically follow an impulse, you build autonomy. The promise of constant seeking is freedom. Its frequent effect is silent emotional dependence. Paradoxically, when urgency decreases, relationships gain more reality. Understanding your own desires works as an antidote against acting without thinking. Being present with yourself reduces the attempt to fill inner gaps with other people. Life is too short to spend energy merely reacting to repetitive stimuli. Renouncing the immediate does not mean denying life, but choosing more carefully where to invest attention. Many experiences that once seemed important leave no lasting memory because they were only quick exchanges, not connections. Current culture suggests we must always want more, yet this script is ancient. The real decision may be to prefer tranquility instead of constant intensity. Taking control of your own direction does not eliminate desire. It only prevents it from driving alone. The impulse will always tell you to act without reflection. Questioning it is the beginning of autonomy. Thinking before following is a simple gesture, yet it transforms your relationship with your own nature. Instead of automatic obedience, you begin to choose consciously. And in that choice begins a quieter form of freedom. Learn to appreciate without needing to claim. Some things preserve their beauty precisely because they remain free. A landscape observed from afar, a gesture that does not need to become possession, a presence that does not require control. When everything becomes conquest, value fades. Emptiness is not resolved by accumulating sensations. It transforms when it encounters meaning. Sensations are intense but brief. Meaning endures and calms. Seek what nourishes rather than what merely stimulates. Creating something, understanding someone, helping without immediate interest, perceiving reality with greater honesty. The body is not an object of constant exchange. It is the point where consciousness perceives its own existence. Treating life as a permanent marketplace only increases restlessness. Schopenhauer lived simply, and many would call it lonely, yet he departed understanding himself. Perhaps that is worth more than a succession of meaningless experiences. You do not need to wait for the end of life to reconsider direction. You can begin now, choosing less urgency and more presence. Constantly searching for another person is sometimes fear of facing your own finitude. Yet vitality lies not in the number of encounters, but in the quality of the moment lived. A single true moment weighs more than countless distractions. Being different from the pattern may require courage, but it brings clarity. Try turning off the noise for a while. Pause the stimuli, breathe without haste, realize that existing does not depend on constant validation. In this silence, the impulse loses part of its force. The natural tendency continues to exist, but it no longer commands. Understanding becomes direction. The new is not always what is missing. Often, it is only an escape from what is already present. When you stop searching outside, you begin to recognize within. If this reflection resonated with you, support the work by leaving a like. And if you wish to go deeper, subscribe to Inner Odyssey. It helps the channel continue bringing content like this and keeps this conversation alive among all of us.